I want you to picture a half-broken, flimsy shed that looks like it's on its last legs. It looks like it's about to collapse. And I want you to picture a well-built mansion. Beautiful-looking mansion, very well-structured. Now imagine a storm were to come by, even a heavy wind. Just any sort of hit, any shake at all, right? What do you think would happen to the shed? It'd collapse, right? What about the mansion? You hit it with the mansion. If something gets hit there, then it's not even going to shake. It's not even going to shake, right? Versus the shed, it's just going to collapse instantly. Now, without focusing on the exteriors of the structures, like without looking at the outside of it, I want you to picture just decorating the interior to the best of your ability, just putting in a bunch of expensive stuff in there. 4K, Ultra HD flat screen TV, premium expensive furniture. You even renovate the place inside and you make it all pretty and shiny. Now, is that going to make a difference when you look at the exterior of things? Decorating the interior. Both the mansion and the shed have the same interior, but their exteriors are completely different. The moment something happens, the moment it gets shaken, something happens, right? The shed collapses, and then all that expensive stuff in the inside just breaks. It's done for. It didn't even matter that you decorated the inside at all. It wasn't worth anything because of the fact that the exterior was weak and it just collapsed and broke everything. This describes a lot of us Muslims today, and this is what happens when we put too much focus on the interior. We look like we're the half-broken shed versus the well-built mansion. Without being able to build solid foundations upon our faith, it's not worth anything. All the interior stuff, seeking a ton of knowledge, wearing the most modest clothes, growing a beard, praying all the sunnah prayers, and I'm guilty of this myself. I try to strive as much as I can, as many of us should, to try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we put too much focus on the interior and not enough focus on the exterior. We need to be able to build those root foundations in the background that's going to tie with the interior and protect the interior. So look at it this way. If our foundations are weak, the slightest tremor can shake us to the core and cause everything to collapse. It could even lead us to disbelief. Astaghfirullah. This is why a lot of people, when they get a burst of motivation to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they try new things. Oh, I need to read more Quran. I need to pray more sunnah prayers. I need to do more good deeds. When they start doing this, it's great. It's great that you're motivated. It's great that you want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's great that you are forcing yourself to try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the problem is when things start to get difficult, this is when they return to their old ways, scrolling on social media, seeing friends and wasting time, not being productive, etc. And I'm guilty of this myself. Whenever we get a burst of motivation, right? We always want to do the best we can, right? We get so motivated to do so much in terms of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even just when it comes to things in the dunya, right? Just being more productive, doing more work, etc., etc. You're going to burn out if you don't have the solid foundations in the background. And that's what the 3 golden principles are for. These 3 golden principles, they're going to give you stability as a Muslim. It gives you clarity on your purpose, no matter what path you decide to take in your life. It gives you strength in the face of calamity. Think back to that example with the weak shed and the flimsy shed and the mansion. Having strength in the face of calamity, you're going to be like the mansion. When something hits you, it's not even going to shake you. Hasbi Allah, right? You're going to embody that, right? Allah is sufficient. Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil. He's efficient in all of our affairs, and He's the best disposer of all of our affairs. You're going to hold that firmly after having these three golden principles and living with them, embodying them in your life. It gives you tranquility throughout your life journey. Tranquility throughout your life journey. Number 3. And how often can we say that we're at peace all the time? We're at peace all the time. You can't always say that, right? We're always going to have anxiety. We're always going to be worried about what's going to happen next, about our future, our health, etc. How are things going to look down the line? These worries are things that are going to just lead to destruction, right? Over time. But it's just inevitable for us to deal with these sort of emotions. But this returning back to these three golden principles and embodying them again is going to allow you to stay firm and always be content, no matter what. Even if you deal with hardships, yeah, the hardship itself is going to be difficult, but you're going to be able to get through it. You're going to have the sabr that's needed to get through it. And you're going to be able to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's elevating your status that way. You're going to be able to achieve excellence in your affairs no matter what path you take. Whether you become a student of knowledge, whether you decide to become an engineer, a doctor, entrepreneur, whatever path you decide to take, no matter what path you take, embodying these three principles within your life is what's going to get you closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't need to be a student of knowledge to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, look at Iblis. He was the most knowledgeable person, right? He was the most knowledgeable jinn. And what happened to Iblis, right? It's scary to think about that, right? Knowledge doesn't get us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gets us closer to Him. And that's what these three golden principles are going to embody. Principle number 1 is climbing the mountain. You have to picture your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you're climbing a mountain. Picture Mount Everest, for example, almost 30,000 feet, probably even hitting 30,000 feet, right? It's 29,000 something feet, right? Now imagine looking at the top of that mountain from the bottom. You're like looking up at the top of the mountain, right? And you're like, how am I ever going to get up there? You start dreading the climb, right? You look at that, you're like, you just see how high that is. And you're like, right? How am I ever going to get up there? How is that going to affect your climb? What do you think? How do you think that's going to affect your climb? It's going to make it more difficult, right? You're not going to be as motivated to get up to the top. It's going to make you feel like you're defeated, right? And let's say you start climbing the mountain, right? And can you sprint to the top of it in one go? No, I think you'd literally die if you tried to sprint to the top in one go, right? Now, you have to look at it this way. Pace yourself. Your energy is limited. You'll burn out no matter what. Even if you try to move really, really fast going up the mountain, try to go super fast, you're going to run out of energy and you're going to burn out. This is why pacing yourself is so important. You're going to pace yourself on the climb to Mount Everest, right? You're going to take breaks, you're going to recharge, refuel, etc. These are things you have to do to get to the top. It's the same concept with our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? We're always going to have ups and downs, right? This dunya, this life, it's a test. There's always going to be ups and downs in every single moment of our lives. But being able to recharge and pick ourselves up and continue moving is what's going to get us moving closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you ever question that you're going to make it to the top, right? Thinking back to that earlier, remember this one of these beautiful ayah from the Quran. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will not burden a soul more than what it can bear. Allah will not burden you more than what you can bear. You have to remember that and you have to embody that. That part of the ayah is so powerful because it gives you that contentment, and when you embody it, it gives you that contentment knowing that no matter what you go through, you can bear it. Allah knows that you can get through it. He knows you more than you know yourself. He knows you can get through it. That's where the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes. And also remember, regarding pacing yourself when you're climbing, Allah loves the deeds that are done consistently the most. Even if they are little. He loves the most consistent deeds, the ones that you're always doing for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some huge good deed is not going to compare to some smaller deed that you're doing every single day, all the time. Like, praying your 5 salah, right? Doing the obligatory things. But on top of that, if you have the habit to pray the sunnah prayers, maybe some of the sunnah prayers, not all of them. If you have the habit to give sadaqah every single week, even if it's $1, that's going to be so much more valuable to Allah than as if you gave just like a $1,000 donation or $10,000 donation one time. If you give a smaller donation, but you're always doing that consistently, it's going to matter more to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't take on more than what you can do. This is the idea of pacing yourself when you're climbing the mountain, right? When you're taking your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only take on what you can take. And not only are you not going to run out of energy doing that, right? But you're going to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than as if you sprinted yourself up the mountain, try to do a bunch of good deeds and then burn out, right? And then not stop doing them. Allah loves the effort. He loves the effort you take towards Him and the consistency that you take towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to attain the mindset that attaining Jannah al-Firdaus, the highest level of Jannah, is possible. That building a super strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possible. That getting super close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possible. You have to believe with full conviction that this is possible, but you have to remember at the same time that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can will that to happen. Only through His mercy are we going to attain these. Only through His mercy are we going to attain Jannah, right? But you have to have the mindset, you have to have the firm belief that you will attain, that you can attain Jannah al-Firdaus, that it is possible for you to do so. Now, I want you to picture this. Imagine, you're climbing the mountain. You're pacing yourself. You're moving slow with what's in your capability, but you're giving it all your effort. Now, you see people below you just moving past you, just whizzing past you. And then you also look ahead of you and you see people far ahead of you looking towards the top. How do you think this is going to affect you? Seeing people below you just like zoom past. And you're like, right? You're going to be like that. You're going to be like, what? Is this climb even for me? You're going to be asking your questions like this. You're going to ask, is this climb even for me? People are zooming past me and I'm moving at the speed of a snail. Is this even for me? Is this even worth it? And then you look back to this ayah in the Quran. This is one of the most beautiful ayah in the Quran, in my opinion. And this changes how I look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely. It sheds a completely different light on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like on your view of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَنْ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَهُ. Allah is only going to give you what you work towards, right? He's only going to give you the reward for your effort. There is no reward except for the effort that's put in. وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. And that the effort is going to be seen. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Allah looks at your efforts, not your results. When you look at this, when you see this ayah, it completely changes your perspective. It completely changed my perspective on how I see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just imagine that. Like, picture this. Picture a salesperson, right? A salesperson gets hired, builds a great CV, and then gets hired by a sales company, and then their boss tells them they have to make, let's say, maybe 10 sales by the end of the week, right? They have to make 10 sales by the end of the week. And then this person's are like, okay, all right. And then they put in so much effort, day in, day out, work 12 hours a day, just full on hard work and effort, putting that into that, getting those 10 sales. And then by the end of the week, maybe he only gets like 2. And then his boss pulls him in. He says, okay, I'm unfortunately going to have to let you go. You did not hit our threshold for the week. And then he's going to be like, but I worked in and day out. I worked 12 hours a day. I put blood, sweat, and tears into this. And then the boss is going to say, well, I'm sorry, you didn't hit the 10 sales. You're just not good enough, man. I don't know what to say. And then they're going to be like, get out, right? But Allah, He's going to give you the reward for all that effort you put in. He doesn't care about the results. The results are within Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's control. He gives you, the results are up to Him. The results are with Allah. He'll give you what He pleases to give you. But the effort, He's going to reward you whether you get the results or not. Whether you get the results or not. If you're striving for good in on the way to Allah, and you're trying your absolute hardest, that alone is going to get you to the highest levels of Jannah. Putting in all your effort to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what's going to matter the most. Not the results. Not the outcome of what the effort was put towards, right? So compare this, right? Someone super fluent in Arabic, like they grew up with Arabic as their language and they're learning the Quran. They're able to read and they're able to recite and they're able to do all this stuff pretty quickly. It doesn't take them that long to do that, right? Versus someone who reverted to Islam, such as myself, and this person did not know Arabic and they had to learn the language from complete scratch, and they put in all the hard work and effort to get to the same place. That's going to be so much more valuable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than the person who already knew Arabic, and they were able to pick up things easier. Principle two is to be like a bird. And what do I mean by this? I mean, as you climb the mountain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, expect the unexpected. What things could you run into when you're climbing the mountain? A storm could happen, snowstorm. You could run out of food. You could run into obstacles. You could injure yourself. There's a lot of things that could happen that would set you back, right? We will face the unexpected. It's inevitable. Allah will test us. It's a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will test us. We can run into health issues, relationship problems, children, finances, whatever test Allah puts ahead of us. Being like a bird is going to embody tawakkul in Allah. Tawakkul. It's going to embody that in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you were to rely upon Allah with the required reliance, so you were to have full tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would provide you just as He provides the bird. The bird goes out in the morning with his stomach empty, and it returns full. 100% of the time. 100% of the time. Unless, of course, it dies, right? But if it doesn't die, it's going to have a full belly. This is what it means to be like a bird. To embody that tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? To embody it fully, 100%. When a bird wakes up, right, it has no idea where it's going to get its food, right? With us, when we wake up, we know exactly how we're going to get our food, right? There's food in the fridge. There's food we can cook. We could go to a restaurant nearby. We could literally just go anywhere, right? Just pull up to a restaurant, just order some food, or we can just cook something that's right in front of us, right? A bird, when it's leaving its nest, it's like, it has no idea where it's going to get its food, right? It can't just go to Birdseed Express, right? There's no like special place like restaurants and stuff like that. That accessibility is not the same for them as it is for us, right? We have easy access to food. Birds do not. They have to go seek their food, knowing that they may not be able to get their food. Not knowing if they're gonna get their food or not. They don't know this. The bird may get injured, It may get hit by a car. It might get its wing run over. It might run into something and hurt itself. It might lose a wing. It might even lose an eye, right? But it's not going to give up, right? It's not going to say after all that, okay, all this stuff happened to me. It's not even worth it. No. He knows that if he doesn't go get his food, he's going to die. He's going to die, right? This is the same idea. This is the same concept we have to have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And embodying that tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means doing what you can in your situation. So even if your situation is harder than someone else's situation, Allah knows that. Allah knows that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows my situation. He knows your situation. He knows everybody's situation. The effort that you put in is what's going to matter the most in the long run, even if you don't get the results, right? And that's how you should look at it. Subhanallah. So leaving the results to Allah and doing what you can in your situation, your specific situation. Because tawakkul is not just based on the idea or concept behind it, like just, okay, trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then just sit around and do nothing, right? No, it's action based as well. Doing the actions that show your tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning you know that no matter what happens, it's best for you. Allah knows best. Allahu a'lam, right? He knows best. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. Whoever relies upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is sufficient for them. I want you to picture the king, maybe it's like the king of your country, maybe the president of your country. Someone very, very high in power within this dunya, right? Imagine someone very, very high in power saying, they're sufficient for you. They're saying to you, I am sufficient for you. Meaning, whenever you need money, they'll give you money. Whenever you're in trouble, they'll be able to help you. Whenever you seek protection, they will protect you. You'd be over the moon, right? You'd be like, wow, like amazing, right? You'd just be like blown away. You'd just be over the moon about it, right? You'd be like, that's amazing. What about Al-Malik? What about the King of Kings? Allah. Allah is telling you here that if you have tawakkul in Allah, then He alone is sufficient for you. He will provide you. He will provide you. He will provide for you. He is sufficient for you. When you seek His protection, He will protect you. When you ask for Allah to provide you, He will provide you. He's Ar-Razaq, right? Hasbi Allah. This is the idea. This is the exact mindset we should be having towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to our affairs. Now, the last principle is to tread carefully, which means to have taqwa in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Have taqwa, to have fear. And that's the common translation for taqwa, but there's many more meanings behind taqwa, right? There's many more things that tie to it besides just the idea of fear, right? And a more simplified way that I can explain it here is taqwa is like watching every single step that you take up the mountain. So the mountain you're climbing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're watching every single step you take up that mountain. You're watching every single action you do. This means being mindful of every single action, big or small. With every decision, with every action and reaction, you place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the heart of it. And watch the wonders unfold in your life. Watch the wonders unfold in your life. You place Allah at the heart of every decision. knowing that no matter what you do, it's pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it's not displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So watching over every single action, making sure that you're not displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will find ways out from sources you could not even imagine. And that was another one of the ayahs, right? Whoever fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever has taqwa in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He'll make a way out for him. Out of every single hardship, out of every single calamity, out of every single affair, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way out. Knowing that no matter what you're doing, it's pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it's displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we should be striving for. We should be striving to watch every single action we're doing, knowing that Allah is As-Sami' and Al-Alim and Al-Basir, right? All hearing, all seeing, all knowing. And embodying that in our lives. Embodying these three principles into your life is what's going to get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's what's going to prevent hardship from overtaking you and causing you to collapse. And it's going to protect you in your faith. It's going to hold you firm. Because having these three principles is what's going to build that mansion. You're going to be the mansion. You're not going to be that half-broken, flimsy shed, right? You're going to become that mansion with building these three principles and embodying them in your life. Trying your absolute best to embody them in your life. And knowing that, having this specific knowledge and implementing it in your life is what's going to get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope you all benefited from this video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.